As you guys know, names are very important, and we see that throughout entire scriptures. And the Father always gives us a revelation through the meanings of each of the names that appear on scriptures. So in this case, since we saw several names mentioned in this chapter, we're going to see what each of them means one after the other, so that we get to see the meaning or the revelation that Yahweh wants to give us through those names. So here you guys can see each name. Thank you, brother. You put it how they pronounce it and in Hebrew, and then the meaning. So I will read the meanings and explain, and you will be able to see which name is each of them. I will obviously add certain words to connect each meaning, but in most cases, those words will be neutral to the actual revelation. So Ahashverosh, this is an interesting meaning for a name. But yeah, for this one, I will have to explain a lot. So let's go to Blue Letter Bible and see the name Ahashverosh here. So it says, I will be silent and poor. There are several ways in which we can see this. Yahweh said, I will be who I will be. So we have one, I will be here. As we know, when Yahweh said that, he was saying, I will be the first, I will be the last. He said two I will be's because he would manifest twice, as two, one through Yahudah and one through Yahusef. The last would come as the prodigal son. So he would come in a spiritual sense, poor. Right? So I will be silent and poor. The silent part, and even the poor one, connects to the last coming as a thief in the night. For a thief, most of the time, well, not all the time. In fact, the worst thieves are the ones who have the most. But you know how back in the day, one who would steal would be mainly because he didn't have, right? So poor, but mainly silent, like a thief would enter a house as silent as possible, even though there are some dumb thieves out there, right? But a good thief would be silent. So I will be silent and poor, for the last comes as a prodigal son, poor as a thief in the night, silent. But if we see this name letter by letter, we find something quite interesting that also shows that it refers to the last. I will write it here. And see how letter by letter we get the name, but hopefully you will see by the translator what each of the words that are part of that name mean. So first, which is brother, right? As we know, like I said, the prodigal son is the brother of the one who never sinned, right? The last comes as a brother. That's why also the constellation of Gemini, which is actually the one in which we are this month, Gemini is a representation of the first and the last as twins. That's why it was Thomas, the twin, who checked Mashiach's wound when the first, the day of the Omer was fulfilled, the first Omer. So Ach is brother. So see how the first two letters is Ach. Then we have Shor, Shin Vav Reish. I will do it separate so that you see what the word means. Hopefully we'll translate it correctly. Shor, the ox, unorthodox to the dogs. All right. So a shor, shor is an ox. And remember that the last comes as the ox. Yahushua came as the lamb, the last as the ox. First and last, lamb and ox. Or also, we could say the male goat and the ox, the two sacrifices for atonement that are done on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. So on the Day of Atonement, they would sacrifice two animals, a male goat that represented Yahushua, and then an ox that represents the last. They would mix the blood of the two animals into one vessel and then use that to atone, representing the coming of the first and the last to be sacrificed and the union of them after the resurrection as one. And then there was a sacrifice of a ram that represents Eliyahu, the other witness, but that was a different type of sacrifice, not for atonement. And the male goat that was given for Azazel, sent to the desert, that was represented by Barabba, when Mashiach and Barabba were placed before the people, and they chose Mashiach to be sacrificed, and they allowed Barabba to go away. Barabba, which means son of the father, because the two male goats had to be just like each other. They had to look perfect. So Yahushua, the son of the Father Almighty, and Barabba, the son of the Father. And they chose Yahushua to be sacrificed, right? So the brother is the shor, is the ox. And Ahashverosh, we have a vav and a shin. If we change this one, a vav. Now the vav has the sound of the U, the O, and the letter V. In this case, as we know, it is pronounced as an O, Ahashverosh, Rosh, right? This is Rosh. That sound, Rosh, means head. It is the sound of this word, but with an aleph. But the sound, and through a certain way of changing letters that is done in Hebrew called Chilufei Otiyot, the changing of letters, we could change the aleph for a vav. We have Rosh, which in a way would still represent head. And then we have Shor, Rosh. That would be the brother who is the ox comes as the head. Right? The head is the ox who is the brother of the chosen few, we could say as well. Or obviously the brother of Mashiach. And we have the name Ahashverosh when we put all together. So I hope that is clear. For Ahashverosh would be the brother who comes as the shor to be the Rosh, the head of the congregation. He comes as a thief in the night, for he comes as silent and poor. All right. So with that said, let's go back to the file. And we have that Yahweh pretty much is saying that when he would come as the shor, as the ox, to be the head of the congregation and the brother of Mashiach, he would come silent and poor as a thief in the night. Here we have two meanings for India. Now let me look at the concordance real quick to see why that would be, or which one to use. Because possibly we could use both. Obviously it will give us different revelation, but I just was gonna choose one. Hodu, flee away, give ye thanks. Yeah, pretty much in Hebrew would be to give thanks, as in the word todah. This is very much similar to the root of todah. I would like to see why the fleeing away as well. As we know, the chosen few are the ones who will flee away, but as in Hebrew, at least right now, what that seems to me is thank, right? To thank, to give thanks. So I will be silent and poor, and I will give thanks. Cush is black. Ethiopia is well what it became, but Cush means black, and as we know, black refers to, well, in the spiritual sense, the color obviously refers to darkness, and therefore in the negative sense is connected to sin. As we know, the last would come as a prodigal son, but he comes as a thief in the night, therefore in the middle of the darkness. spiritual darkness of the end times. So, like a thief in the night, I will be silent and poor when I give thanks in the middle of the darkness. I will be silent and poor when he appears for the lily, right? When he comes for the congregation, which is like a lily. The lily, the congregation, which is pure and splendid, and for those in the middle. We could say that he comes for the congregation, which is the few and the many, but also if we just focus on the congregation, which is the lily, those who are pure and splendid, who are in the middle of the land, right? Who are in the middle of this world. Those who are the lily, who are beautiful, right? Spiritually before the Father. I will be silent and poor and faithful. So we know that the last comes as the faithful witness. If we were not to repeat Ahashverosh, which appears several times already, it would say that comes for the lily, the congregation, which is beautiful and faithful, right? For the chosen few are the ones who are faithful. But keeping the Ahashverosh, which represents the last, I will be silent and poor and faithful, like the witness, the faithful witness, when coming for the booty. He comes as a warrior, right? So he comes to fight against the mighty one of this world and against the false preachers. So once he defeat them, he's going to take what was theirs, and that is called booty, right? So I will be silent and poor as the faithful witness, coming as the witness who is faithful and who is a warrior to take everything that is in the hands of the enemy while riding a donkey, which represents being humble, being a king, because kings would use donkeys. That's why Mashiach entered Jerusalem on a donkey, also because through what he did, he would bring judgment. And judges also rode on donkeys, but mainly represented being humble, also strong, for donkeys are strong. And in another sense, it represents that the last would come in the eyes of the people of the world as a Gentile, because the Egyptians were called donkeys in scriptures, and Moshe was seen as a Gentile. The last is the witness like Moshe. Joseph, who is the ancestor of the last, was sold to Egypt as a slave, so he was poor. He remained silent. He didn't say anything about who he was, where he came from, in order not to put his brothers to shame or bring pain to Jacob. So he was silent. And like I said, he was seen as an Egyptian, just like the last, a descendant of Joseph and a witness like Moshe. Both were seen as Egyptians. So the fact that he comes on a donkey represents the fact that he comes humble as a king to bring judgment, and is seen as a Gentile, as an Egyptian. So he comes as a warrior to get what's in the hands of the enemy, riding on a donkey, humble as a king to bring judgment, in the middle of the winepress, or riding on a donkey to the winepress. That's interesting, very powerful, because we see that the last is the one who will well, I spoke about this a lot this weekend, but let me see it real quick here, since maybe some will hear this study and not the ones from the weekend. So let me share the screen for a moment. First, let's go to Isaiah 63, chapter that I love. It's one of the ones I mentioned the most, I think, but I don't know why. So chapter 63 says, no, I meant it. So who is this coming from Edom? Who is this coming from Edom, right, as a Gentile? And well, this is one of the reasons why I mention it a lot, because this revelation really impacted me when Yahweh gave it to me. The fact that Jacob dressed as Edom, as his brother, Asaph or Esau, in order to enter and take the blessing from Yitzhak, following the orders of his mother, Rivkah. So the fact that Yaakov got dressed as Edom to take the blessing, and now Yeshayahu is seeing somebody dressed as Edom, and he says, who is this? Just like Yitzhak said it when he heard that someone entered his room, right? And well, it says, with garments glowing colors from Bosra. This connects with Job, and Bosra means the sheepfold. So it is the last coming as a Gentile to take the sheep, the chosen few, for he comes as the good shepherd from John 10, who is robed in splendor. He comes as king, striding forward in the greatness of his strength. And then Yahweh speaks, it is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. It is I. In a way, like when Jacob dressed as Edom entered Yitzhak's room, and he said, are you my son, Asaph? And he said, it is I, right? So now Yahweh is saying, it is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is there red on your raiment and your garments like one who treads in the winepress, right? So he's surprised because he doesn't recognize Yahweh, for he comes as a Gentile from Edom, from Bosra. He's all in red, which is the meaning of the word Edom, which also represents the fact that he comes as the prodigal son, for Edom represents sin, and it has to do with the apostasy, reason why the many will end up in the winepress. Why is there red on your raiment and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? I have trod in the winepress alone, says Yahweh, and from the peoples no one was with me, and I trod them down in my displeasure, and I trampled them in my wrath. Their blood sprinkled upon my garments, and I have defiled all my raiment. For a day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come. The day of vengeance is in my heart. Yahushua came with mercy in his heart. The last comes with vengeance in his heart. Yahushua brought forgiveness of sins. The last will bring judgment and also the redemption of the few, in the sense that it will be manifested in his time, obviously through what Mashiach did 2,000 years ago. But now if we go to Revelation 14, at the very end of the chapter where we find the harvest, we see that it says, and another messenger came out of the slaughter place, having authority over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him, having the sharp sickle, saying, send your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe. Those are the many. And the messenger thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of Elohim. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the bridles of the horses for about 1,600 stadia. So it will be a river of blood that will come out of the winepress of the wrath of Yahweh, which is all the people who will die for not accepting the doctrine of the two witnesses. And then when it is too late, not accepting the mark of the beast, they will be taken to be killed, and there will be a lot of blood because of that. And lastly, in Revelation 19, it says, and his eyes were a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself. So no one knows his name except himself. That's why he must manifest himself to teach the name. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the word of Yahweh. His name is called the word of Yahweh, as we said in the previous chapter that we read from Thessalonians. And the armies in the heaven, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Those are the chosen few, now his army. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, for he is the good shepherd. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. He treads the winepress. We just saw it in Isaiah 63, which also connects with Yashar 55, a nice chapter that we read on a couple days ago. And obviously with the message that we are seeing in this, in the names of the first chapter of Esther. So you see how it says, I will be silent and poor like a thief in the night, as the faithful witness coming for what's in the hand of the enemy with whom he's fighting a war, riding on a donkey, for he is humble, but he will be seen as an Egyptian, as a Gentile, when he comes to the winepress of the wrath of Elohim, of the winepress given by Elohim, confirming it, right? To the winepress given by Elohim, to the star. Remember that stars represent angels. The last is the Malach of Yahweh, is Mikael, a star. And that's why in Numbers 24, it says that a star shall come out of Jacob. A star shall come out of Jacob. Numbers 24, we see that it says, I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob. That refers, in the literal sense, it was fulfilled when a star came out in the firmament to show the wise men from the east where Mashiach was born. But in the spiritual sense, for what one fulfills literally, the other fulfills spiritually. So the last is the actual star being born through Jacob, meaning being a descendant of Jacob. So this could be read as an angel, a malach, Mikael, shall come out of Jacob, shall be born as a descendant of Jacob. And a scepter, meaning, and he will be a king, shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab. He will fight with those who are of Satan, and shall destroy all the sons of Seth, he who wants to take the place of Mashiach. So a star shall come out of Jacob. So going back to the file, once again with the names, you see, to the winepress that Yahweh has given to the star, to the Malach of Revelation 14, who will tread the winepress after he is killed and resurrected. That's why he went from being silent and poor to being the star. I hope that's understood. And he will be severe, right? For he must tread the winepress of the wrath of Elohim when he is silent and poor, or when he manifests as the last who comes silent and poor, but beautiful, beautiful spiritually, or for the beautiful one, the congregation, when he comes silent and poor for the beautiful one, who is illustrious, like a star, with a testimony to them, right? For he is the witness. He brings the testimony to them who are illustrious and beautiful, meaning the congregation, with a testimony to them of Tarshish. This is very interesting, very powerful, because Tarshish is said to be nowadays Spain. And a lot of Israelites were in Spain in 1492 and were kicked out and brought to America and put throughout the whole continent, bringing it back. I will be silent and poor when he comes as a thief in the night, as a faithful witness, right? While being faithful, coming for what's in the hand of the enemy with whom he is fighting a war, riding a donkey, for he will be seen as a Gentile, while being humble, coming to the winepress given by Elohim to the star, the Malach Mikael, who comes being severe and silent and poor for the beautiful and illustrious star, those who are like the stars of heaven, or when he comes as a star, with a testimony to them, for he is a witness, with a testimony to them of Tarshish, with a testimony to them who were kicked out of Spain, right? The Israelites who were spread throughout the nations, mainly America. Or testimony to them who are as a yellow jasper, meaning as a precious stone. The chosen few are like stones, for they will be used to build the temple, the spiritual temple, but they're precious. So a testimony to them who are like a precious stone, and lofty and worthy and dignified and splendid in the middle of the land. right? The chosen few who have all those characteristics. Those are the ones that are chosen by Yahweh. Those who are beautiful. For I will be silent and poor, but dignified and beautiful, while silent and poor, coming for those who are pure and splendid in the middle of the land, pure, splendid in the middle of the land, and beautiful, when I will be silent and poor, but dignified. So that's what we get from the first chapter. Like I said, we will see one by one with each chapter. So in this one, it was pretty clear that it refers to the coming of the last to gather the chosen few as a witness, as the faithful witness, seen as a Gentile and coming to the winepress and becoming the star of Numbers 24, and to gather the congregation that is beautiful, lustrous, like a star, like a precious stone, lofty, worthy, dignified, splendid, and beautiful. So that's wonderful. And that's how the chapter ends.